mute so our colleagues online can hear.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi. So we only get 1 hour together, so that's why I'm being a taskmaster right now. Thank you for joining us. In addition to the folks in the room, we have about 15 or so folks online as well. So this is a great session. We have a lot of interest here. I'm happy to introduce TJ Augustine, who is the Vice Chancellor, Interim Vice Chancellor for Innovation at UIC. TJ coordinates technology commercialization, entrepreneurship activities that are part of UIC's innovation ecosystem. He's also a professor in the Department of Chemistry. The units that report to Dr. Augustine include ACCC, Extended Campus, and there's a new office which is going to be focused on corporate relationships. So thank you, Dr. Augustine, for joining us today. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I'm happy to be here and have a chance to talk to you a little bit about the work my office is doing. It's a new office, and I wanted to take some time to tell you all about that, and also about just some of the interesting things and opportunities I think we have here at UIC, and some of the strengths that I think are sometimes undertold about the university that we'd like to do a better job of promoting. Just a little bit, just so you understand my background. Again, I'm on faculty in chemistry and also in public administration. I've been in this role for about a year, and again, it's an entirely new office at the university. Prior to that, I worked in the system offices and working on economic development. Spent some time working on the Discovery Partners Institute while I was there as well. And before that, I worked in the federal government for the Department of Energy during the Obama administration. And a lot of that work involved trying to put together partnerships between universities that were receiving funding from the department and companies to help try to take that research from sort of the early stage at which the federal government often funds to the point where it can actually turn into a product that is impacting people's lives, in that case, trying to impact climate change in the work I was doing there. So that's just a little bit about me. I'd like to also make this in sort of interactive. So if you guys have questions as I'm going, please just raise your hand, blurt something out, stop me, and we can stop and talk a little bit. And I don't have a hugely long presentation, so there should be plenty of time for discussion. So to jump right in. Okay. Oh, now it is. Okay. I don't know what happened there. Okay. So we kind of hit on this just in my intro, but again, it's a new office. And part of the reason for creating the Office of Vice Chancellor for Innovation was, I think, the Chancellor's interest in, one, trying to aggregate a bunch of different pieces of the university that are involved in innovation, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And also to try and sort of put a stake in the ground that innovation is something that is really important here at this university. It's something I think that, in 10, 15, 20 years, if not already, it's something that people really think of when they think of UIC. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that means when we think that we're a leader in innovation. But that was really, I think, a lot of the impetus for creating the office. And the areas that we really think of focusing on are encouraging collaboration. And when we talk about that, a lot of it really means beyond our walls. So there's a lot of collaboration that takes place already throughout the university itself with other faculty, our colleagues at other universities. But what we're really talking about is encouraging collaboration beyond the university. Even just right here in our own community. We're right now across the highway from one of the fastest growing tech communities in the country, right here in Chicago, and we're sitting at their doorstep. And there are really a lot of, I think, very exciting new opportunities for us to collaborate in new ways and take advantage of, in that case, just our location. Another is advancing online learning. This is an area where UIC, I would say, hasn't moved as fast as other universities. A lot of universities have developed pretty large, robust online education platforms. UIC is nowhere near as large. It's a very, very, very tiny proportion of our students that are purely taking classes online. However, we have a really strong base in that tiny portion. Last year, U.S. News does their rankings. They do the best bachelor's completion degrees, and UIC was ranked 5th in the country. And that's really on the back of 3 programs that we have: an online RN to BSN, so that's a nursing program, an online bachelor's in business administration, and the third being an online bachelor's in health informatics out of College of Applied Health Sciences. Those are really 3 terrific programs, and they've I think if any of you here don't know the people that run those programs, I'd encourage you to talk to them if you're interested in online. They're really great examples of how you can take really terrific content and educational practices into the online setting and be really successful doing it. So we have a great platform to build off of, and that's really, I think, how we think of how we're going to innovate in the education space. Another is leveraging IT infrastructure. IT is sort of, well, at first, if you talk, I think, to the average person on the street and you ask them about innovation, information technology is often the first thing that will come to mind, for better or for worse. It's just sort of what is in the cultural lexicon of what is innovation. And here at UIC, I think that this is a place where we can really help innovate in terms of how we do business at the university, how we do research, and how we educate. IT underpins almost every single thing we do all day. I mean, try to think of what it would be like to come to work and do your job without IT resources. It's almost impossible to think that through for most people these days. And I think that we can do a lot of things as we start to think more creatively about those IT infrastructure and services. We can do a lot of things to do our jobs better, more efficiently, make our business practices more efficient, and again, do complete our mission in education and research in an even more effective way. Supporting tech transfer is another one of those. So this is really taking the research that we do and turning it into products. So getting it out of the university after the research is completed and into the hands of the private sector to take those inventions that we have and again, impact people's lives. And last, sort of ties in with tech transfer, is fostering entrepreneurship. So when appropriate, encouraging and supporting our faculty and students to be entrepreneurs and try to take some of those exciting discoveries and make them real. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Media.
So as was mentioned before, there are 3 units that sit in my portfolio. The first one I'll talk a little bit about is ACCC and dive a little more into the IT space. So one of the most important things we can do there is maybe less exciting innovation and more creating the foundational infrastructure that we need to innovate. One of the things that I learned that may resonate with some of you here when I started, as I sort of dug through some of the challenges we were facing, was we faced some gaps in terms of Wi-Fi coverage on campus. We faced some gaps in terms of having good phones in all places on campus. I won't tell you some of the stories about how we store voicemails on some of our older phones. And lastly, the wiring. What you probably don't see is the wiring on campus, particularly on the West Campus, which has there's some real challenges there. A lot of that infrastructure was installed in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's just very out of date now. And it needs to be replaced. And if we're going to have a sort of a robust infrastructure that allows innovation to take place in as efficient way as possible. And so one of the big things we're going to be working on in the coming year is putting a plan in place to start updating some of these things, because it's I'll come in a second to some of the things that I would like to do more of that are a little more creative, but it's really hard to do some of those creative things if we don't have the foundation in place. Sort of starting to build the house without building the basement. If you don't build the basement, especially here in the Midwest, you're going to have a lot of problems. So so that's sort of that first piece. But from a more creative and innovative standpoint, sort of the sky is the limit here. So I'll just speak from some of my experience when I was at the Department of Energy. IT was in the process of evolving there from being sort of a simple service provider. They were the team that, again, fixed problems with your desktop, made sure that the servers were running. It was very service support. They were starting to move into a space where they were providing solutions, right? So they were looking at business practices, looking at how people did, looking at HR systems, looking at billing systems, looking at payroll, looking at travel, and trying to figure out, okay, here are all the systems that everyone uses to do their jobs. What are some things that we can do from an IT standpoint that will make all of this much more efficient, much more easy for everyone to do, and really allow everyone to do the real, important parts of their job better and spend more time on that. We have some challenges here that are just sort of structural, that, like, for instance, we don't, things I've learned, some of our banner, for instance, which some of you, happy topic, that's a system-wide resource, right? So not all of this is under our purview. But I think that there are a lot of pieces that are under our purview that we can start to address as we get some of the foundation in place. And again, try to have more user-friendly systems. One thing I would love to see, getting to this point isn't always easy, but I would love to be able to log into one system that had access to all the business information you needed just through one login, right? Sort of a simple request, right? But that would be really valuable, right? It would make everyone's lives, I think, a lot easier to be able to just have one platform that has everything you need at your fingertips. And there are reasons that we don't have that are beyond just sort of like, well, why didn't even no one think of that? But there are some things we can do here, I think, that if we think creatively, will make our jobs a lot easier and make this university a better place. Extended Campus. So Extended Campus is an office that's been around for some time. It was created in the late 2010s as a result of Global Campus, for those of you who've been around for a little while. It houses some of our online degree programs, but not all. A lot of our online degree programs that do exist sort of run just through the college. They're not supported by Extended Campus. But one of the things we're trying to do is really have Extended Campus become more of a thought leader and service provider for online learning across the entire campus. One of the biggest challenges I would say we've faced to growing online learning is it takes a fair amount of investment to create new programs or to take existing programs and put them online. It's not something that can be done by flipping a switch overnight. You need a lot of design support to convert the content to an online format. You need marketing support to really market online, because that's where online students are looking, and you have to invest in those kind of campaigns. So it is the startup process is very cash intensive, and has been something that UIC has had a challenge figuring out how to tackle. So what we've done over the last few months is we brought on, well, honestly, the process took a lot longer than the last 2 months, but the last few months we've brought a new partner on board called Academic Partnerships. They're an online program manager, and what they do is they do all of that upfront work for the university in terms of instructional design, marketing, student recruitment. All those pieces that that aren't academic are handled by the partner. The university doesn't have to invest any dollars in doing that work. What the partner gets, the Academic Partnerships gets on the back end, is a share of the tuition dollars. But what it allows the university to do then is to start to create new programs and grow that space without the large investment of cash up front that would be required otherwise. So it's a way to kind of get around that hurdle and start to move forward. The other piece that we found, I think, important about Academic Partnerships, which is relative to some of the other online program managers, is they draw a very strong line between the work they do and academics. So they are very clear about the fact that they don't they're not involved in the teaching, the education, the advising, any of that. That is all firmly in the university's camp. Their job is to handle the non-academic portions of online education, again, which is the support required to turn the faculty content into an online format and the marketing and the process. So this has just started. We are hoping over the coming months we'll find a handful of programs, either new programs or existing programs that will launch into this partnership to start as early as next fall. And we'll get the ball rolling there with them. But we think it's a very interesting way. It won't work for every program, but it'll be a way to start, again, to grow some of these online programs, establish more of a presence in that space. A big part of online degrees is brand awareness and having sort of a brand in the marketplace that students recognize. And by getting some of these programs that we have in place, like the RN to BSN or business or the applied health degree, or again, creating new programs, getting them online, getting larger enrollments with help from academic partnerships will be, I think, an important first step in helping us grow our brand in this space and expanding. And I'll just say to kind of tie that one up a little bit, I mentioned at the beginning that innovation is something we think UIC can be known for. In my opinion, one thing that UIC has always been known for is access to excellent education, right? We're a place where anybody from any background can come and have a home. And I think in today's environment, you can't really talk seriously about access without having a strong online presence. It has become the way that you reach a certain type of learner here in this day and age. And so I think it's really an important part of our, given our mission, given our, what this university has valued for the last 50 years, I think it's an important part of our portfolio. The last piece in terms of the units that report up to my office that I'll mention is corporate engagement. And this, I think, is a really exciting area where UIC is an opportunity to grow. Just an anecdote, most universities of our scale probably have close to 10% of their research dollars that come from corporate sources. We're under 5%. So we don't do real well in this space right now. That's not to say we don't have some good corporate relationships, because we do. Most of them are kind of at the individual faculty member or center level. They're not very strategic across the university. And again, also from a comparison standpoint, we're one of the few universities up to this point, at least, of our scale that hasn't had an office or an individual, at least, focused on these kind of strategic corporate partnerships. And I think that they're becoming more and more critical for a university like ours to have. One space is in federal research. More and more, having corporate partners when you're going after big grants is seen as not just nice to have or maybe have, but absolutely necessary. When we recruited Joanna Groden, our Vice Chancellor for Research, one of the things that was a common point of discussion was how do we get more big center grants here at UIC? And I think everyone probably agrees having more of those would be an important part of growing our research portfolio. But I can tell you from my federal experience, you're not going to find any federal agency that's going to be giving you a multi-tens of millions of dollar grant without some kind of impact, sort of post-university impact. And a lot of times that means having a team of corporate partners that are engaged in the grant. I'll say from a student standpoint, too, this is hugely important. I was listening to a presentation this morning about sort of the new generation of students that are arriving on our campus, and how one of the top things that they value more so, I guess, than other previous generations is sort of how do we link the educational experience that they're receiving to what they will be doing when they hit the job market when they graduate. And finding ways to get companies engaged at an earlier stage at the university with our students, I think is a real big selling point for recruiting great students to our university and just delivering what they want at the end of the day, which is a great job. So there's there are a lot of interesting ways that we can start doing more of this. Just last night, I was on a call with some people from Caterpillar. Caterpillar is a company that's had a lot of relationship with the university over the years. Peter, who's in the corner there, can speak to that at the Innovation Center. But Caterpillar's opened I'll tell an anecdote here that's sort of, I think, indicative of how Chicago's changing. Caterpillar is a company that's been based in Peoria for its entire time in existence. They just moved their headquarters to Deerfield a few years ago, up in the suburbs. And more, what they're focused on, in addition to building big yellow, construction equipment, is the digital side of things, right? Every single piece of equipment they build has a computer on board it, and they're collecting data. They're trying to figure out how to use that data. They're trying to figure out how to be more efficient through the use of that data. And so they've created a team that's called CAT Digital, which is an office that, instead of putting it in Peoria, lo and behold, it's just west of the river on Madison or Adams, about a 15-minute walk from where we are here. And they've got a pretty large team there now of not mechanical engineers, but computer scientists and business analytics graduates. And so they're very interested in, the way they put it was, we want your students and we want your students to be prepared to hit the ground running on day one, which means more experiential experiential learning opportunities while they're in college. And they also want to engage in ways that are sort of stickier engagements. In other words, they don't want to just show up at a career fair and talk about Caterpillar to some students. They want to find ways to do programs, whether those be some student-centric innovation, projects where they get students to work on a problem that this division at CAT has, or a little mini master's student research project in the faculty lab. Whatever it is, they want to have some ways where they're engaging more deeply with students while they're still in the university. And I think that this is it's a great thing for us because it starts to build some of these deeper relationships with these companies that can be valuable for us, again, in a whole host of ways. But it also provides a really exciting experience for our students that is different than we've traditionally provided. So I think that there's a whole host of exciting opportunities we have here. And so we've started a new office. That new office that reports to me is one person, but his name's Alan Konkarovich. He was hired, again, just about a month and a half ago. And we poached him away from the Polsky Center at University of Chicago, where he was basically doing this job. And he's a great addition to the team, and I encourage you all to reach out to him. And he'll have a host of information to share and talk about how we can do more in this area. So that's kind of that piece of the different units that report to me. Might pause for a minute and just before I move on, see if there's any questions or any thoughts anyone wants to share.
I have a question. I'm going to go over it again in engagement. So one of the big roadblocks that's really suit the company, I think. Mm-hmm. So getting any sort of innovation with the company typically takes such a long time, such a cumbersome.
Yep.
It's not practical.
Right.
So
any thoughts on it? Yeah. So I think there's a handful of ways here. So one is trying to just streamline some of these units. So I won't go through the whole, I think Office of Sponsored Research, which is where a lot of these functions sit, is going through some changes. And so I think that Vice Chancellor Groden is working on trying to address some of these issues. Some other pieces just trying to be more, make it more simple and business friendly to work with companies. So one thing that, just as an example that we're considering rolling out is the University of Minnesota has, what they've done is basically on their website, they have a number of template agreements for how you do a research contract with the university. And basically it lays out sample IP terms, and sort of business terms for for a relationship. And they come in 3 flavors, which sort of align with different types of projects. And they're pre-approved. They don't need to go through the process, right? So basically, if you take one of these template agreements, you can just, if the company is comfortable with it, everyone just signs it and you're done. That is a very interesting option to look at. I think from everything I know, the universities that have done that have, it's been successful. It's led to more partnerships. I think that one of the biggest challenges that we face as a university in going down that road relates to some of the IP on the drug discovery side, which I'm going to talk more about in a minute. But drug discovery and everything else almost fall into 2 categories from an IP standpoint. And most of the universities that have gone down this sort of express contracting pathway don't have large academic medical centers with lots of this work taking place. So this is just sort of an in-the-weeds detail, but you have to find a way to kind of parse that so that you don't mix. You're not using the wrong contracts for the wrong projects.
So my question would be, do you know of any university that really lost time because they wrote the contract? So I have the impression that lots of these standard laws are there because people are really conservative.
Yep.
Think, well, we might lose all these things. I don't know that that's really
well.
happens, right?
So I will give you. I'm going to give you an example without names that's here at UIC and took place in the last 6 months, where someone signed a contract which it was basically a simple research contract that gave all of the, basically 100% of the intellectual property control to the funder. And the funder is not necessarily an individual who has the capacity to fund these projects at a large scale going forward, but they have entire control of the intellectual property. And it turns out that the work that was done under the contract led to a pretty exciting invention. And now we're faced with trying to figure, and the faculty member is very interested in taking that invention and doing something bigger with it, creating something larger here at the university, like from a research standpoint, like a center, and also trying to figure out what could be done commercially with it. But we nor he has any ownership of that intellectual property. And so are we going to lose out massively? I don't know. I think there'll be a way to sort it out. But in my opinion, if there'd been a slightly different contracting process in place for doing that agreement, we wouldn't be in the, my guess is everyone would have signed it still, and we wouldn't be in the position.
I don't understand how anybody, the way my experience is that every time I do something, no. 10 years.
Yeah, well, it's a long, yeah, it is a puzzle, unfortunately. But yeah.
Well, I think the point is how much stuff has been lost because of the slow and paranoid lawyers.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to just throw one other thing on this issue here, because every time getting information flowing, oh, wait a minute, if you talk to anybody in a company, you have to talk to development so they can bump you, but they can beg them for money. It's like, shut up, okay? But it's a constant thread. It's a constant thing coming at. It's like, what we're talking about here is different. Oh, but we were trying to get a grant from them. Well, I don't know what the right. I don't know the answer, but I know it's a confusion.
Yep.
And it's a problem.
Yeah. What I will be very clear about, and I don't know how many of you met Tom Wamsley. He's our new Vice Chancellor for Advancement. And he and I and the Chancellor have talked about this at pretty great length. And what we see 2 very different things here, right? What you're talking about is corporate advancement. It's raising money from companies in a gift sense. Like you're giving, we're asking you to give. And what we're talking about here are, I would call them business partnerships.
And I'm going to tell you that, like, for example, I'll also say our faculty have a whole lot of contacts they're not sharing.
Yep.
And what's probably more important is to have a platform through which faculty can build good relationships that they have and get them properly done, legally done, and so forth. and we check off all the boxes. So
Yep.
like, oh, I was, but I do know a vice president. Okay, I have
Yeah.
people. We talk to people.
Yep.
One of my first projects when I came here was we tried to put a database together with a business faculty to share their leads with each other, and all of us are like going, easy to write the database. Nobody put anything in.
Yeah, of course.
Like, I'm not going to have you talk to my friend over there that I learned when I started another university or my consulting client. I'm not going to give it to somebody else to go in and ruin it for me. A platform's critical and a culture's critical.
Yep.
And I think the thing about the paranoia is they're paying attention to, oh, we could have done this, when in fact we're losing huge amounts of benefit because of the kind of slow platform we have.
Yeah, no,
When I teach strategy, I talk a lot about platform, and platform becomes the whole issue for the faculty to succeed.
Yep. As
opposed to the university's paranoia about doing that.
Yep.
Like, who owns the student work in a class if one of our students invents a product and he works for a company? I know. Absolutely.
Yeah. Several startup websites started, companies started all about that.
Yeah.
I kept arguing with,
No, we never saw the benefit of that ourselves.
Yeah. Well, we should have another conversation on that, which is a whole nother conversation. Yeah.
The other side of the coin is also incentivizing faculty to participate in some of these projects.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, here, faculty get graded on anything.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So it's something that outside of their work, how are you going to work on this project? Helping outside.
Yeah.
Whereas they could just be writing their papers.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I
run into that.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue, and I mean, I'll say not everyone's going to do this, right? Some people are going to just write their papers, and that's absolutely fine. But I think that only two things I'll say right now are: one, I think that there are opportunities to work with companies in exciting ways that don't prohibit that. Number one, and number two, I think it's something that we should increasingly think about, right? Is how can you have sort of the incentives provided to faculty reflect more of this work? And that's a more complicated discussion, but I think it's something we should be thinking about.
I was just making the point that there's a whole cultural issue because there's a fantasy among a lot of IT people like that if you build it, they will come.
Yep.
This is the whole thing that happens behind the whole knowledge creation system and so forth. If you build it, they will come, and nobody shows up. And clarity and platform is critical, but also building a trust thing where I can actually feel that, if I work on this, I'm not going to get ripped off by the university. I'm not going to have wasted all this time, and so I'm not getting this paper done. And then they say, oh, you didn't write that paper.
Yeah.
It's like, so I'm just saying the culture is an issue. I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff up here, a lot of cool IT stuff, a lot of cool legal stuff, a lot of cool procedure stuff. That ain't necessarily the only problem.
Yeah, no, I
just
understood. Of course. Yeah.
That have somebody in some office
Mm-hmm.
that helps faculty from other members.
Yep.
If they're open to legal and it's not clear, what the review for that.
Mm-hmm. So Alan, the new person who is, at least from a corporate engagement standpoint, that's basically what Alan is starting, right? He is there to be a resource for faculty to help them figure out how to navigate doing this, right? So like, how do you basically say, like, okay, I want to work with company X. Alan is someone who can help you figure out, okay, can we make this, can we make a partnership work if that's needed? And then from a contracting, legal, all that sort of standpoint, say, okay, Alan, or hopefully Alan's team eventually, here you go, and they run, that's not something the faculty member needs to deal with or worry about. It happens quickly, and then you get back to your work. So that's the idea. Yeah.
So I'm going to start faculty development training, tutorials, the best practice, how to navigate processes, how to these types of things, not just around learning, but just how to have a corporate function. I'm actually meeting with their on Friday to talk about infrastructure. What does it live? Who's available to create it? Elizabeth Romero in your has been a huge mentor to me, but it's like we don't have. I'm not enough, and there's such a demand for these types of resources. So like, where would that fit? Because I know in some academic partnerships, that's like a course development thing. But where would training and other types of media creation?
So it depends is sort of the bottom line, right? And this is something we're actively thinking about. So instructional design, for instance, right? If it's a program that's going through academic partnerships, they will provide instructional design resources. We also have instructional designers here on the campus. In terms of sort of like, how do you sort of professional development in online learning, like that's sort of, I think, where you're getting at. Extended Campus is trying to think through whether they can provide more of those. That traditionally hasn't exactly been something they did, but that could definitely be something they expand into. There's also a new, I'm going to get the name wrong, I want to say it's the Center for Teaching Excellence. So there's some thought about that unit being able to provide some of those resources. And then on a more technical side, again, ACCC throughout Elizabeth's unit, they have various resources to, again, provide more of the technical support.
In the phrasing of the name of this organization was design, your academic design.
So academic partnerships. Yeah.
You keep talking about curriculum design.
Mm-hmm.
And deference to our colleagues in design. There's a whole spectrum, for example, for design that goes all from leading innovation, deep understanding, all the way back to the insult, putting lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, when you say instructional design, do you mean you're going to take my PowerPoints and turn them into something more appropriate for online? Or do you mean that you're going to go through and participate in how the material is presented? Or are you going to be talking about, well, that's not what you teach in human resources.
Yeah.
And basically, I mean, it's very easy for a company like that to cut and paste the same stuff and pull together. Companies make a lot of money doing this, and having academic ownership of a bunch of content that's not actually going to our faculty.
No, so that, So it is absolutely 100% not the latter.
I just want to say, when you use the word design, it's incredibly fuzzy.
Just to be clear though, when we talk about instructional design, we talk about something very, that it may be a little unclear, but it is a very specific thing. And it is really that, it's primarily focused on the first piece. How do you take content that has been created for an in-person classroom setting?
I just want to suggest that maybe a word like formatting might be better than design as you're talking about this. Because when I listen to you, I'm going like, wait, I've already had people try to do that. And hand stuff and sell my stuff and videotape me. Going, you know.
Sure. No, fair enough.
Those are legitimate instructional designers that have to do it. We're so behind that we don't have enough.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean by design.
Maybe like.
Because I know 100 meanings of design.
Yeah.
And our folks here too.
I think it would be more about like designing concepts like our learning management system.
For Blackboard.
Like Blackboard.
So formatting things to work better on Blackboard.
And maybe even creating some media and partnering with the faculty members.
Hello. This is Kate Treadway from one of the distance call-in people. I've worked extensively with instructional designers, and they do. I work with our online R and BSM programs, one of the degrees that TJ mentioned, and they definitely helped with formatting, but the instructional designers sat down with us and gave us pedagogical, how best practices for online learning. So things like, so they really did show us theory for how you deliver problem-based learning, how you activate thought, how you demonstrate knowledge, integrate and apply and stuff. So it's much more than just taking your PowerPoints and turning them into some flashy something or other. So. at least the good ones we work with through UIC. So.
Thanks, Kate. Good to hear you. Anything else on this? See how we're doing on time. We're running a little short, so why don't we just move ahead? So another area I wanted to mention is supporting tech transfer and entrepreneurship. So just again, little anecdote or story here. Any guesses from people in the room? Oh, step back one more second. So one way, for those of you who aren't as familiar with this area, one way a lot of people look at determining success in commercializing inventions is royalty revenue. It's not a perfect one, but it's one that a lot of people use. So any guesses in the room as between UIC, Caltech, and Urbana-Champaign, who has the most royalty revenue from their inventions?
So you asked the question.
That means there's a provocative answer. It's UIC. UIC does, by quite a lot, actually. So UIC in the fiscal year I think that we're currently in now, is probably going to tick across $40 million in royalty revenue that we receive from our inventions. It's largely driven by 3 drugs that we have on the marketplace. We're one of the only universities in the world, actually, that has 3 drugs right now concurrently on the market. And those are, and one thing I'll add too here, it's interesting the breadth of departments that have done this. It's not like this has all come out of one department. There's an HIV treatment called Prozista, which came out of LAS, Department of Chemistry. A bladder cancer treatment called Tice BCG, which came out of pharmacy, and which is actually being repurposed for all sorts of different things beyond bladder cancer. And lastly, the newest one, which is called Shingrix, which is a shingles vaccine. So basically, if you're over 50, this is the vaccine pretty much everyone is getting, and it within basically 2 months on the market a year ago, it was over 95% of the shingles vaccine market. And that was invented by the College of Medicine, folks in the College of Medicine, actually on the Rockford campus. So it's a wide array of diseases treated by these things and from a wide variety of departments on our campus. And it really speaks, I think, to our strength in both sort of coming up with novel ideas in this space, but also I would say sort of we have a lot of researchers who are interested in what I call the more translational research space. So they're not just focused on the basic discovery, but they're interested in that stage of development that's a little bit beyond the basic discovery and is moving towards commercialization, but within the confines of the university. A big asset there is the medicinal. We have a lot of strength in medicinal chemistry, both in chemistry and in some of the health colleges, pharmacy and medicine. And that is relatively unique to find. A lot of other universities, which are often a higher profile in their sort of science and engineering recognition, just don't have that kind of capability that we have. And so we've got a lot of strength here. And one of the things that we wanted to think about doing was how can we leverage that strength and partner with someone who can help us do more of this, sort of better than we're doing it ourselves. And so earlier this year, we entered a relationship with a company called Deerfield Management. They're an investor in healthcare. They invest across the healthcare space, so drugs, devices, analytics, you name it. And what they are doing with us is we created an entity with them called West Loop Innovations. And there, Deerfield has put $65 million, there'll likely be more, which goes to fund drug discovery projects at the university in our labs. Those projects are selected by a board, basically, of 3 of us from the university and 3 of us from Deerfield. We make these decisions jointly of who to select. And the projects are funded on the order of $5 to $10 million each per project over the course of about 3 years. It'll end up being less. These are very much project-driven. They're not a research grant. So if halfway through everyone realizes it's not going to work, they shut the project down. And then if these projects are successful, they'll get to the point of being ready for clinical trials while they're still in the university. And then we have an agreement in place to basically license that technology into a startup, or could be a large company if that makes sense, and commercialize it from there. And Deerfield and the university split sort of the ownership of that at the beginning. Yeah.
Well, that's the question. It might sound insulting, but it really is a clarifying question, which is, as you talk here, what's been clumped together in this kind of Frankenstein department, okay? On the one hand, it seems to me that the university is saying, how much money can you make for us? Now let's put every bit of our work in high-ticket items, which means screw education. Okay?
Sure.
When in fact, people going down and working for a local hubcap company, coming into one of your classes, working in an operations thing here, is going to educate our students. People working on a project for Caterpillar are going to educate our students. It's going to be it's a challenge for you to balance those two things.
So,
good luck.
Is there a question?
Yeah.
No, I'm just going to say, good luck.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay? Because it's a huge challenge in my mind.
Yeah. I've bitten off a few big ones in my time, unfortunately.
All right.
The online people want to know what the audience is saying, so they can't hear what we're saying,
Oh.
but, sorry for feedback.
All right. So this was what we created with Deerfield. We're at sort of the very start of it. We hope the first projects we fund will be selected probably this spring, and we'll go from there and see. But what we're interested in particular with this is how can we do more of this in other parts of the university's research portfolio? So, I mean, drug discovery is just one chunk. It's where a lot of revenue is created and that sort of thing, but it's just one chunk of our portfolio. And so of late, or over the last 5 to 10 years, UIC has developed a number of relatively small but effective ways of funding research across the board that faculty are interested in trying to turn into commercial opportunities. And the two biggest mechanisms have been the Chancellor's Translational Research Initiative and the Proof of Concept Fund. I won't read all the details. But West Loop Innovations has, again, created this sort of different opportunity with larger potential impact and sort of partnership in the drug discovery space. So what we're interested in doing now is trying to come up with, are there other research areas at the university that lend themselves to this kind of a model, where we bring in one or more private sector partners with sort of expertise that matches sort of where our gaps are, and also with financial support. And the university comes with our faculty and students who are doing exciting research in this area. There's got to be the market opportunity in any of these spaces to make it work, and put together a partnership similar to West Loop. So some of the others that we're kicking around right now that people have suggested, and I think make some sense, are software and medical devices, which are, again, just two areas that I think have some potential, and there's some interest amongst our faculty and administrators. But this is at an early stage, and I think there's certainly other areas we could consider to try and pursue in this space. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, they're basically a private equity firm, whatever you want to call it, venture capital firm. They manage $10 billion, mostly for really they manage a lot of university endowments. They manage large net worth individuals. Is where they get it.
Probably a better lawyer. Question: how good are agreements? All right.
Yeah.
PJ, this is Steve Ackerman.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, how are you? How do you see DPI fitting into this plan?
It's a good question. So maybe the best way to put it is, I think at this point it's still a question, right? I mean, so DPI, the way I describe DPI is that it's a applied research institute, and so ultimately I think it provides a space for people who are interested in doing that kind of work, and it provides in theory, it's sort of an institute that will help bring companies to the table to work more closely with our faculty. So in terms of the mission, it aligns with a lot of this work. That said, the DPI is just starting up. It's at a very early stage. And, the way I have looked at this is we want to keep engaging with DPI, support DPI, try to find ways to leverage the things that are taking place there. But I think there are a lot of things that we can do faster and with less fewer barriers to getting things done. And I'm interested in moving more quickly, to be honest, than I think DPI is going to move, just because there's so many moving parts that make it difficult. So I hope that answers your question, Steve. But I see it as just sort of, again, a related but sort of parallel opportunity.
Yeah, that does answer my question, and I agree with you. There's also CBC, which we have a fair amount of engagement with.
Absolutely. So CBC, for those of you who don't know, CBC is the Chicago Biomedical Consortium, which was originally created. It's a partnership of the three big universities in town, us, Northwestern, and UIC. And originally it was focused on providing relatively small amounts of funding that encourage collaboration amongst faculty at the three institutions. It is, I would say, in the basic science space. It's now moved a little more towards translational funding. And I think if I go to my last slide, and we're running out of time, I'm going to skip that one. You'll see it's right on there, Steve. And I think a big part of what we do in innovation involves engaging with entities in our community, right? We have tons of opportunities to do things in partnership with what is a really exciting and growing innovation ecosystem in the city of Chicago. And CBC is just one of those. On this previous slide, I was just talking about things that are sort of within the university. CBC is just one of a handful of places that I think we already are doing a lot of work with and should continue to, and they play an important part in the system. Since we're almost out of time, other questions? Yeah.
If anyone in your office or elsewhere faculty, staff navigator, issues?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, oh, sorry. The question was whether there's anyone to help navigate ethical issues with these partnerships, and that's a really important point. There's an office in the Vice Chancellor for Research, the name of which I'm not going to remember now, but there is an office within VCR that is focused basically like ethics and compliance or something like that. And they're the people that handle the RNUAs. And they're there to help you navigate these issues. And I think that that's a really important, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's particularly important with some of our startup activities that faculty sort of like lay everything out as they begin to go down these paths. It makes everything easier to handle down the road if all those conflict of interest issues are handled right up at the front. And there's some good models, I think, at the university for addressing those, and it's just important to sort them out. So yes, it is there. Yeah.
I just want to suggest one thing. You talk about branding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the, let's say the brutal truths about being at UIC is if somebody offered you the chance to work at Harvard Medical School or here, you're going to Harvard. Okay. So there's a funding. Okay. There's the kind of things they specialize in are all this kind of focused, detail, very critical. But Chicago style is about getting stuff done.
Yeah.
And so the translational stuff you're talking about is getting stuff done.
Yep.
When we're talking about educating the real kind of people who come to the door with the kind of access that we have, which are not just technology, but and distance, they're also diversity and disability and all this kind of thing.
Yep.
I have a feeling of what Chicago style means to me. Okay. And I really like Chicago style creativity. Yeah. I like Chicago style innovation. It's real, it's not full of BS.
Yeah.
And that kind of a feeling that, hey, that's the kind of place you go to a school, and you're not getting all this BS, you're connecting, and it brings in your whole connection to the industry, it brings in these relationships, entrepreneurship, but it's like, we're in Chicago, we get stuff done.
Yeah.
It goes back to the city of Broad Shoulders.
Yep, I agree.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it. Yeah, I think drawing all of this back to Chicago is
with pride in that, not feeling like we're a second-class operation because we can do stuff they're not going to do.
That's
right. We can do stuff they're not going to do.
Agreed. Yeah, very good point. Yeah.
I'm wondering about the criteria for selection. Potential what are the, but also.
Depends, but yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering about what kind of criteria. Also, would we invest in a product or even a service? Because I don't do services or intellectual property. Focus on
Yeah. Device.
And there's a lot of that.
I agree.
Profound impact on the landscape, but it's not. There's no place. There are many fewer places to fund that.
Yeah.
And so impact is changing the way that it's going to be in the world, but might not address shingles, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
I
where
agree.
does that
fit in?
into?
So I think, so I would say this, talk out of both sides of my mouth sort of, but on one hand, it just is harder, right? The university sort of traditionally hasn't been set up as well to handle some of these things. And so it is harder, there's no question about it. That said, I couldn't agree more with your point that there is tons of work here that fits it very well. And our tech transfer office has started to see more and more these kinds of innovations, inventions, whatever you want to call them, that I would describe as sort of more social impact as opposed to commercial impact come through their doors. One brief example is a diabetes prevention program that's been done here at the university. And so this is actually something we're thinking about quite in a focused way now, is how do you start to take some of these more social interventions and find ways to turn them into bigger opportunities. And you made the point about revenue. Revenue on some level, makes things obviously easier because it costs money to take things from the standpoint there are at the university to do something bigger outside with them. But there has not been a decision in any way made, like, okay, we're only going to pick things that have huge commercial dollar potential. I think social impact, let's just call it that for a minute, is a very interesting area that we could start to address with one of these translators like I was talking about instead of medical devices or software. The key piece that we're thinking through is it's probably not going to be a big investor or corporation that becomes your partner. It's going to be a foundation or a city. You know, it's going to be a different type of partner there. And so we're trying to think through who those might be. I think UIC, back to the point of like we're different than Harvard, this is something that UIC can really be a leader and be recognized for, and I think in a lot of ways already is recognized for. And if we're able to find a way to really take some of those services, interventions, and find ways to make them more impactful, that'd be huge.
One thought I had.
Yeah.
Go back to the chart about
Yep.
If we had a chance to social
fund. Yep. Yep.
parallel.
Parallel. Yeah. That would be a good one. Yes, that would be a good step in that for sure. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I like the idea a lot. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all. I think we're at the end, a little past the end of the hour. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. Hope you learned something, and happy to continue the conversation if any of you are interested.
Good luck with the challenge.
Thank you. Thank you. Of course.
Did you meet Dina? She's new in Dina.
I don't think so. Hi there. Nice to meet you.
Director of Finance and